Thank you very much for your patience and for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We will now begin the briefing on NYK Group ESG Story 2023. I am Tatsumi, Head of ESG Management Group, and will be the moderator for today's session. First, let me introduce today's speakers. Soga, Representative Director, President, and Group CEO. Kono, Representative Director, Executive Vice President, Executive Officer, CFO, and Chief Executive of ESG Strategy Headquarters. Tsutsui, Executive Officer and Deputy Chief Executive of ESG Strategy Headquarters. After Mr. Soga's opening remarks on NYK Group ESG Story 2023, Mr. Kono and Ms. Tsutsui will explain the key points of NYK Group ESG Story 2023 using slides projected on the screen. This will be followed by a Q&A session. I will explain how you can ask questions later. The materials on NYK Group ESG Story 2023, the case studies, and the NYK Group decarbonization story that we will explain are also available in the press release issued at 12 noon today, so please take a look. The video of this presentation, including the Q&A session, will be available on demand. Thank you for your understanding. Mr. Soga, please begin. I am Soga, President and CEO of NYK. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule today to attend this briefing on NYK Group ESG Story 2023 following the second quarter financial results briefing held earlier today. At noon today, we announced NYK Group ESG Story 2023. Following the first edition of the ESG Story in 2021 and the second edition in 2022, this third edition of the ESG Story, under the theme of Co-Creation for the Future, presents the progress of NYK Group's implementation of ESG management, focusing on non-financial targets updated after the announcement of the medium-term management plan in March of this year, including the contents not fully presented in the plan. To advance ESG management to the implementation stage, we established ESG Strategy Headquarters in April this year to further deepen our ESG penetration activities, redefine our materiality, and clarify our human rights initiatives, and finalize the details of our decarbonization strategy, which is being pursued seriously with a sense of urgency. Through these efforts, we redefined our future vision and direction, and this ESG report, third edition, represents a roadmap for sustainable growth, along with more specific initiatives. Regarding decarbonization targets in particular, we have moved away from the conventional approach of creating numerical targets by simply piling up realistic solutions while ignoring the possibility of ambiguous future technologies, and instead set ambitious targets, made a list of what we must do to achieve them, and incorporated them into our actions. This change in our way of thinking is the key. We will face many challenges on the road to achievement, but we will demonstrate the will of our group with our corporate culture of accepting challenges without fear of change, which has been passed down from generation to generation since our founding, our accumulated knowledge from our past efforts, and our strong determination to lead the industry. I will now turn to Mr. Kono, Executive Vice President and Chief Executive of ESG Strategy Headquarters, and then to Ms. Tsutsui, Executive Officer and Deputy Chief Executive of ESG Strategy Headquarters, who will elaborate on the presentation. Next, Mr. Kono and Ms. Tsutsui will explain the contents of NYK Group ESG Story. Thank you for the introduction. I am Kono, Chief Executive of ESG Strategy Headquarters. Ms. Tsutsui, Deputy Chief Executive, and I will explain NYK Group ESG Story 2023 and NYK Group Decarbonization Story. We publicized NYK Group ESG Story 2023, Co-Creation Cases, and NYK Group Decarbonization Story today. The main contents provide an overview of the ESG management implementation phase, while the cases are carefully selected examples of co-creation with various stakeholders. NYK Group Decarbonization Story provides details on our strategy to achieve our ambitious decarbonization goals. The ESG Story has been published since its initial release in 2021 to update the progress of our group's ESG management. The main theme of this edition is Co-Creation for the Future, a passion for planetary well-being. This story shows the progress of each measure to realize our vision set forth in our medium-term management plan. We go beyond the scope of a comprehensive global logistics enterprise to co-create value required for the future by advancing our core business and growing new ones, together with our various stakeholders. Over the past 4 years, we have been working to foster an awareness to maximize earnings and achieve sustainability of society and environment to promote ESG management. The story we present here is the implementation phase of ESG management, which aims to create corporate value and social value simultaneously by aligning the two vectors mentioned earlier. To further deepen this ESG-centered growth strategy, we have set a new decarbonization target, especially in the material issue of environment. In order to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, we have raised our GHG emissions reduction target for 2030, which is the milestone for 2050, from 30% or more reduction in absolute corporate emissions compared to the base year of 2021 for emissions from ships in Scope 1 in our medium-term management plan, to a 45% reduction in Scope 1 and 2 in absolute corporate emissions for the entire group. In addition, we have set non-financial targets of 0 major accidents in safety and 30% female managers by 2030 in human resources, and are continuously taking actions to achieve them. Ms. Tsutsui will now explain the details of the stories associated with each material issue. Good afternoon. I am Tsutsui, Deputy Chief Executive of ESG Strategy Headquarters. NYK Group ESG Story 2023 is divided into 4 chapters, namely our group's materiality, safety, environment, human resources, and governance, which is the foundation. NYK Group's materiality was established about 10 years ago and is well understood within the company. So this year, the first year of our medium-term management plan, these 3 materialities were deepened further. We verbalized our vision and redefined 17 key themes, which will be introduced later in the co-creation cases. First is Chapter 1, Safety Story. Safety has been positioned in past ESG stories as the top priority. As a corporate group that supports society, we are always striving sincerely and tirelessly for the best. The vision of safety is to support logistics sites with our expert knowledge, skills, and experience based on a high level of safety awareness, and continue to be an organization where people create safety and safety protects and nurtures people's lives and livelihoods. To realize this vision, we established 2 pillars, which are development of personnel with a high level of safety awareness and expansion and penetration of our safety culture. This is a brief summary of our group's safety history. I will not read the details, but we have been focusing on personnel development, starting with the establishment of the Mitsubishi Nautical School in 1875 and NYK TDG Maritime Academy in the Philippines, while also working with our business partners to improve safety levels at work sites through our original quality assurance standard, NAV 9000. We are also striving for continuous improvement through the establishment of Safety and Environmental Management Committee and the introduction of the Ship Management Platform. Yusen Logistics, which has a global logistics network, has also introduced a global quality policy and quality management system. We will continue to develop personnel with a high level of safety awareness through our privately operated Maritime Academy in the Philippines, cadet training ships, and extensive training programs, and will expand and penetrate our safety culture through annual safety campaigns. As an LNG carrier, we will also utilize our experience in handling hazardous materials to promote the introduction of new technologies, including new fuels. As an example of the cutting-edge safety technology that has emerged from these thorough safety activities, let me introduce the establishment of safety for the real-world utilization of ammonia-fueled ships in our challenge for autonomous ships. We see ammonia as one of the candidates for zero-emission fuels for ships and are developing ammonia-fueled ships. As you know, ammonia is toxic. It is very difficult to develop technology while overcoming this risk, but we are working to apply the crew members' frontline expertise accumulated over the years to the design of safe ship structures and also create guidelines for safety assessment. Furthermore, in 2018, NYK began research on ship operation using AI and other technologies, and in 2019, we became the first company in the world to successfully demonstrate autonomous navigation for manned autonomous ships. The fully autonomous ship framework developed by NYK has already been certified by NK and other classification societies. In addition, last year, we successfully completed a demonstration test of an unmanned ship and are now at the implementation stage of autonomous ships. We will continue to work with a diverse group of experts to draw up a comprehensive design for technological development and environmental improvement to solve social issues such as labor shortages and maritime accidents that the industry is facing and lead the industry to a better future. Next is Chapter 2, Environmental Story. As you know, environment is the most important task to realize a sustainable society. Our group is taking on the challenge of balancing global environmental preservation and logistics evolution. The vision of material issue environment. We will not be passive in solving environmental issues, but will lead the world in contributing to planetary well-being through our efforts in the 3 priority tasks, namely response to climate change, prevention of air pollution, and maritime environment and biodiversity conservation. As you know well, environmental issues cannot be solved by one company alone. Recognizing that co-creation beyond the boundaries of companies and industries is essential, we are participating in various key initiatives. In this edition of Environmental Story, we introduce our efforts to reduce environmental impact and achieve sustainable growth through co-creation with multi-stakeholders, including not only the shipping industry, but also competent authorities and customers to realize a decarbonized society. Our decarbonization efforts became full-scale in the 1990s, as shown at the bottom half of this page. And in 2002, we became the first shipping company to be certified under ISO 14001 Environmental Management System. In 2008, NYK developed a conceptual design for the NYK Super Eco Ship 2030 under NYK Cool Earth project. As you are aware, the international community has been strengthening its steps toward a decarbonized society since the conclusion of the UNFCCC in 1992, the Kyoto Protocol in 1997, and the Paris Agreement in 2015. Each country declared a net zero GHG emission reduction target, and the IMO also revised its GHG reduction strategy this year and set a net zero target around 2050. As Mr. Kono mentioned earlier, NYK Group also set a new decarbonization target aligned with the Paris Agreement 1.5 degree scenario. The new GHG reduction target is shown here. Medium-term target is a 45% reduction in absolute corporate emissions for Scope 1 and 2 by 2030, with 2021 as the base year. The long-term target is to achieve net zero emissions in Scope 1, 2, and 3 for decarbonized society. Rather than setting targets that seem achievable, the ocean-going business as a hard-to-abate sector can accelerate technological and business innovation by setting very ambitious targets based on the latest scientific knowledge to address the threat of climate change, which should be addressed by the entire humanity. We have a strong desire to contribute to the creation of a sustainable society by solving problems through co-creation with like-minded partners. NYK Group's decarbonization initiatives have three objectives. First, to fulfill our responsibility to reduce our direct emissions, which exceeds 10 million tons per year, or about 0.03% of global emissions. Second, to build a resilient business portfolio by enhancing our competitiveness in order to survive as a company in any scenario and fulfill our mission as a social infrastructure in the field of logistics. Furthermore, to seize new opportunities created by decarbonization to differentiate ourselves and grow by leveraging our technological capabilities. Let me share with you some excerpts from NYK Group Decarbonization Story released today, and I invite you to also read the main contents of the story. NYK Group Decarbonization Story is intended to be a reference document that details our strategy and approach to achieving our decarbonization goals. But it is also intended to tell the story of our decarbonization strategy, to explain why individual measures and activities work together without conflict and are driven as a whole, and to firmly define the pathway that we should follow. Decarbonization initiatives must be considered over a long time frame, and the future is extremely uncertain. However, responses to global warming cannot wait. We recognize that society is urging companies to have a concrete plan to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 and the adaptability to survive and grow while advancing environmental measures that require upfront investment. Therefore, we will review our existing businesses to make the transition to a decarbonized society a new growth opportunity while appropriately managing the increasing carbon-related risk, and enhance our competitiveness through necessary measures to decouple environmental impact from business growth and realize increased corporate value. First, we will reduce, to the extent practicable and possible, the Scope 1, direct emissions from our own operations, Scope 2, indirect emissions from the use of electricity, and Scope 3, emissions from other companies in the supply chain, and then offset residual emissions that will inevitably remain with CO2 removal in order to achieve net zero emissions. How do we reduce GHG emissions? Since the overwhelming majority of our group's emissions come from Scope 1, which is direct emissions from our operations, we will reduce these Scope 1 emissions as much as possible through two tactics. Tactic 1, maximize energy efficiency until 2030. And Tactic 2, accelerate reductions through the use of alternative fuels from 2030. Based on our future green fuel production plans, we expect that the full-fledged use of green fuels as marine fuel will be 2030 and beyond. Generally, a ship takes about 3 years from planning to completion and then is operated for about 20 to 25 years, including docking twice every 5 years. So the plan is to adopt alternative fuels for newly built ships from around 2030, retrofit the existing ships along the way, and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. To maximize energy efficiency, an internal task force type working group was established to improve operational and technical capabilities. In energy efficiency improvement through IBIS project, we will share best practices systematically, such as communication between field staff and onshore operators, and remote support from shore. To enhance technical capabilities, we will improve energy efficiency through co-creation with engineering firms and suppliers of various technical solutions. Sensing and simulators that harness the power of digital are also key, and we will steadily improve the performance of existing vessels, taking advantage of the ICP internal carbon pricing system. We focus on biofuels, methane, LPG, ammonia, and methanol as future decarbonized fuels. For ships operating on heavy fuel oil, drop-in bio and synthetic fuels are realistic, and once NOx emissions and supply issues are resolved, a gradual transition can be made by increasing the percentage of biofuels. Similarly, low-carbon fuels such as LNG and LPG can be phased out while utilizing existing assets and supply chains through drop-in bio and synthetic fuels. Ammonia and methanol are envisioned for future use as green fuels. As a fuel candidate for decarbonizing of vessels, ammonia is attracting attention, especially in Japan, as production volumes is expected to expand and the technology is expected to mature to a level that enables social implementation within the next decade or two. According to IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, the use of ammonia in international shipping is expected to become full-scale around 2030 and grow to around 200 million tons by 2050. It is important to note that ammonia already has an international supply chain and is attracting attention as a hydrogen carrier, as you know well.
To reduce Scope 3, we will build a low-carbon value chain through co-creation with stakeholders. We will utilize carbon dioxide removal or negative emission technologies to offset residual emissions. The following chart shows the GHG reduction scenario by 2050 through this series of initiatives. We will visualize Scope 3 emission data by around 2025. Scope 1, 2, 3 emissions will peak in 2025 and achieve 45% reduction of Scope 1 or 2 emissions by 2030. The carbon dioxide removal capacity will be gradually increased from around 2030, and net zero emissions will be achieved by 2050 by balancing residual emissions with carbon removal. The remaining emission will be balanced. As business activities increase, energy consumption and environmental impact will also increase. However, while maintaining and increasing the volume of our activities as a social infrastructure, we will strengthen our competitiveness through low carbon and decarbonization, seize opportunities for growth, and grow as a corporate group in a sustainable manner. In other words, we will decouple our business growth from our environmental impact in order to increase our corporate value. We believe that increasing added value by carbon footprint is an opportunity to achieve this business growth, as we understand there is already a willingness to pay for products with low CFT. In logistics, safe transport of cargo was the most important issue, followed by quality, cost, delivery in the supply chain becoming the basics of logistics management. Nowadays, environmentally friendly transportation, how to transport goods without ruining the environment, is becoming a new value indicator. Low carbon and decarbonized logistics service with a low carbon footprint will increase business opportunities. In addition, carbon footprint is an invisible number. Reliability of the data is crucial as an outcome measure. In this regard, we believe that the accurate and large accumulations of the data processed by our group will be of a great advantage in building reliability of carbon footprint of logistics. Next, Chapter 3 is Human Resources Story. Materiality is the ideal state of human resources. In other words, all group employees are able to demonstrate their abilities and play an active role in the group. We will link talent management, D&I promotion, and organizational revitalization with evolution and growth through challenges and co-creation. Since its establishment in 1885, the group's diverse human resources, with a wealth of knowledge and experiences gained through global business development, have been the fundamental strengths of the company. We will continue to uphold the corporate philosophy of BVTL and contribute to the prosperity of the world as a public entity of society. In our mid-term management plan, we set forth a human resources and organizational transformation under CX, corporate transformation. This is to nurture and strengthen both the organization and individuals, and develop human resources with the ability to strongly lead change, on-site ability to support change, and new ideas and approaches to realize our growth strategy. To achieve these, we promote various measures of talent management, D&I promotion, and organizational development. First, in talent management, we will actively recruit professional personnel and strengthen human resource development through training programs, including global training programs, assigning the right person to the right position. By doing so, we will expand opportunity for employees to fully demonstrate their abilities regardless of the boundary of the job. In promotion of D&I, we will focus on global inclusion and gender diversity to promote group employees with opportunities for global activities through training and promotion, and achieve a healthy gender balance. Furthermore, in terms of organizational development, we will promote mission, vision, value, penetration as the foundation of our business, and regularly conduct and utilize global engagement surveys and improve employee engagement. Finally, let me turn to Chapter 4, Governance. We have long been presenting that we consider governance to be the foundation of all of our ESG management activities. In order to continue to improve the transparency of our management, our efforts are centered on strengthening our organizational structure and reinforcing compliances. As an example of our efforts to strengthen the organizational structure, we have shifted to a company with an audit committee system to strengthen the monitoring function of the board of directors, and reviewed the composition of the board of directors, including increasing ratio of independent outside directors to 50%. The company has also established a system for executive compensation that reflects the degree of achievement of ESG indicators. Entering the implementation phase of ESG management, in FY23, the ESG Strategy Headquarters was newly established by promoting the ESG Management Promotion Committee into ESG Strategy Committee, a structure in which specific discussions are conducted by the Strategy Committee members who are an executive officer representing each division. ESG management policies and strategies are approved through a decision-making process from the ESG Strategy Committee to the management meeting and then approved at the Board of Directors. In addition, regional governance officers and regional management officers are instituted to disseminate information to domestic and overseas group companies. This is the third year since the ESG Navigator system was launched to support the bottom-up of the ESG management. A cumulative total of about 350 employees, mainly young employees, have been appointed from all departments at the head office. We feel that the range of ESG human resources has expanded and that basic strength to realize our ESG strategy is firmly in place. This concludes overview of ESG Story 2023. Next, I will present on co-creation examples. At the beginning of this document, we provide a list of what we want to be and the key themes that we were verbalized in the group's deepening materiality. We have compiled a list of case studies on the theme of co-creation with various stakeholders, including customers and suppliers. We took the viewpoint that each case study is not a single point, but rather each is connected to a line and has a broad impact as a plane. We have organized them by tying them to the key themes. As we continue to add more case studies, we will briefly introduce a few individual examples today. First is a co-creation case related to the key theme of materiality safety, addressing operational risks. A basic management agreement was signed between JERA and Teleborg Marine System, Inc. regarding introduction of the ship shaking reduction device for test operations. This is called Dynamoor. It's a system installed in the place of a bed that connects the ship's mooring cable to key wall. It can be installed in a small dedicated area. The tension of the mooring cable is adjusted by the electronic controlled hydraulic damper to reduce the vessel sway. Many ports facing open sea are susceptible to ocean swells. Cargo handling is interrupted by vessels sway. In addition to the operation rate of ports tended to decline, especially when vessels are evacuated from the port sometime. This system will solve the problem and enable us to co-create new value. Next case study is the provision of low-carbon transportation services through the commercialization of LNG fueled vessels. In 2018, our company began development of LNG bunkering vessels and established an LNG fuel supply system through co-creation with various partners. These efforts have led to the stable operation of LNG-fueled car carriers that we have subsequently completed and put into service, providing transportation services in a way that contributes to the GHG reduction for our customers. This is a case study of the NYK Group's NYK bulk project with Codelco, one of the world's leading copper producers and a Chilean state-owned company. The two companies signed a memorandum of understanding to jointly study the decarbonization of the marine transportation of copper products. A global demand for copper is expected to increase due to such factors as the development of power transmission network for offshore wind power generation and the spread of electric vehicle. Through this MOU, the two parties will jointly promote the verification and development of next-generation fuel technologies by leveraging each other's strengths and experiences. The two parties will study the use of zero-emission vessels for the marine transportation copper products, and we also aim to further expand the scope of co-creation as a green corridor project in Chile. The challenge of space business development began with NYK Digital Academy, our group's advanced human resources development program. The enormous passion of the members who proposed the project have led to the co-creation with JAXA and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries as external partner, and research on offshore recovery of reusable rockets is now underway. A department has been established within the company to provide a wide range of services, including land transportation of rockets in the future. Established in Manila, the Philippines in 2019 and launched in 2021 was the Marco Pay, and Marco Pay provides financial services including electronic currency through a mobile app. Its user base continues to grow and surpassed 17,000 users. With a steady growth of e-payments, the number of partners has also increased, as described here. Thanks to our support, we have begun providing financing and insurance brokerage services for housing and automobiles and etc., and plan to expand to more asset building services. We expect this service to have growth promoting effect for the local community as it reduces financial risks and expands opportunity for seafarers who support our group's important frontiers to play an active role in the industry. Our group is participating in the offshore wind power generation value chain as a new business. We have signed an agreement for comprehensive collaboration with the Akita Prefecture, opened Akita branch, and the project is a major value co-creation project that will coexist with the region and develop industries throughout the region based on ESG, including promotion of renewable energy business and including offshore wind power generation, establishing educational facilities for training related personnel, and further ship and port development in regional development and environmental conservation of the area. This is another example of coexistence with the local community and co-creation with the successor of the traditional arts and culture. Our companies, NYK Group, launched a project in collaboration with the Nihon Koge Association and used our ASCO 2 vessels to present their works of living national treasures and other craftsmen, and offer tours of workshop at 29 ports of call. And we served meals using their very high quality plates, craftsman work, to demonstrate how to use such arts. And also we sold the craft works, and part of the revenue was turned back to preservation of the traditional Japanese culture. By introducing and preserving traditional Japanese culture through our business, we will increase interest in Japanese culture in Japan and abroad and contribute to regional development. This is an example of co-creation filled with aspirations, dreams, and romance that is very typical to our co-creation efforts at the group. This is an explanation of each chapter of NYK Group ESG Story 2023. So far was an introduction of our initiatives in safety, environment, human resources, and governance in the implementation phase of our ESG management. ESG management creates a virtuous cycle that leads to our strength as a company, strengthening earning power, reducing cost of capital, and investing in further growth. Through co-creation with various stakeholders toward the future, which is our main theme, and we aim to further scale up the scope of business activities and create long-term corporate value. This is the image of the world and society that we aspire to create. Last but not least, the realization of a sustainable society and the creation of new social values are difficult to achieve by a single company alone. We believe that this NYK ESG story is also a message to our various stakeholders who share the same aspirations, transcending corporate and industry boundaries. With this, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you very much. Now, this concludes our presentation, and we will now move on to the question and answer session. We will appoint the person from the people who are raising hands. We are receiving a lot of questions now, And if you are invited, please unmute yourself and start your question. First is Ms. Kajiwara. Floor's yours. This is Kajiwara from Nikkan Kogyo Shimbun. Thank you for this opportunity. Please tell us about the new GHG emission reduction targets. You have raised the target significantly, and what changes in the external environment that made you to raise the emission targets, or what part of the technological progress that has led so that you were able to raise the targets? The other day, in regard to the Scope 3, you have announced the establishment of the data aggregation and visualization system, but a raise to 45% for the medium-term target. I'd like to know what are the backgrounds behind this. Ms. Tsutsui, please answer. Now, in the medium-term management plan announced in March 2023, in fact, we've already set a target of 30% reduction by 2030. In the same plan, we also committed to further increases of the reduction targets. So upon this comment, the Secretariat re-examined how we could increase the target strenuously, and this is the answer. This time we came up with 45% target. Although there has been no particular technological progress, but as is discussed earlier, we believe that it is our responsibility to set an ambitious target that will stimulate the technological progress. In deciding on the goals, we discussed the great enthusiasms. And we discussed on the various platforms and occasions in the company, including the ESG Strategy Committee and so forth. There were passionate discussions on this point. As Mr. Soga mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it is not just a bottom-up target. It is an ambitious target, and that was actually a very high hurdle. But we had thorough communication, and we were able to come up with another 15% increase in this type of ESG story. So as our scope 1 and 2 showed, because we expect to maximize energy efficiency by improving operational efficiency and vessel specification. Because of this forecast, we were able to set the target at 45% this time. Thank you very much for your answer. Ms. Kajiwara, thank you very much for your question. We would like to now move on to the next question. We will appoint the person out of those who raise the hands. If you are appointed, please unmute yourself and start your question. Mr. Tezuka, please. This is Tezuka of Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Management. Can you all hear me? 3 questions. The first one is, as with the previous question, page 32 on the Scope 3 targets. The chart shows an increase until 2025, which seems rather high because at around 10 million tons, and probably it is larger than the expansion of the businesses. If you could go to page 32, as I recall, it was page 32 in regard to the Scope 3. And the number is showing at around 10 million tons. What factor will cause this huge increase? Is this due to the measurement accuracy issue? Once the measurement becomes accurate, then the number may subject to change. Is it right? And also, does Category 3 include emissions from Category 15 with regards to Ocean Network, ONE? Could you clarify on these points in my first question? Can I continue to the second question? Yes, please. The second question is regarding human resources. As you explained, employee engagement survey was started this year to develop the organization. And you are on right-hand side. You must have captured the total picture now on global basis. What are the current challenges that you have identified since you have started the global engagement survey? So for the last 3 years, you're working to penetrate a mission, vision, and value. And that probably what you have done in the group. In what way you plan to expand this to the global segment? And the third question is that the Tokyo Stock Exchange announced companies have to pay more attention to the cost of capital and stock prices in managing a company and requested a disclosure from these points of view. ESG Story announced this time is to demonstrate your approach in increasing long-time value of your company by helping lowering the cost of capital and contribute to sustainable improvement of corporate value. How do you clarify and explain the relationship between the increase in a price-to-book ratio and the result of cost of capital and increasing corporate value? Do you intend to explain more in the future to clarify such relations? Mr. Soga, if you could explain this point, be appreciated. Thank you very much for your question. Now, in regard to 10 million in Scope 3, your question was perhaps 10 million may be too high, and were there anything that we missed in the past and now it is included anew? Answer is, as you pointed out correctly, numerical figures have increased by raising the capture rate of Scope 3, which was not fully tabulated in the past. The recently announced compilation system, which began full-scale operation in the next fiscal year, and we expect to be able to grasp the entire picture of Scope 3 probably by 2025. And as you asked in your question, GHG emissions from ONE are now included in this number. And this is calculated by multiplying the total emissions by the share ownership ratio. That is all for the first question.
Okay, now the second question about the human capital. Global survey was conducted this time around, and the current challenge and future activities. I would like to respond to this question first. And then if a president has any follow-up, please go ahead. So first of all, global survey was conducted this time around, first time ever. And in terms of engagement, in Japan, not necessarily comprehensive survey, but some surveys were conducted by the human resources. And against this backdrop, it was a very first attempt to do this on a global basis. And I'm not going to talk about all the details in relation to challenges, but some challenges have emerged. And going forward, what to do with the survey, well, domestically speaking, of course, depending on the departments, the characteristics are different. Some of the departments are client-facing, and others are supporting business units from behind the scenes, supporting entire company. So they have different motivational engagement, Even so, in case of our company, we rotate our people. We run PDCA cycles, CDP. So through this, we have received all sorts of opinions and input. And when it comes to developing human resources, we are trying to develop generalists with strengths. And we are trying to develop people offering new career development pathways. That is what we are planning currently. And going forward for a global rollout, currently led by the HR, we are working on the details of the CX strategy, first for our group companies and to outside stakeholders so that we can offer explanations. We are now trying to shape a strategy. We are brushing up our strategy, which is under development. I believe that this will be announced at some point next year, but sooner rather than later, we are hoping to make an announcement about this. Thank you. That's all for me. Any follow-up from President, please? Thank you very much, Mr. Tezuka. I have some follow-up comments. So regarding the expansion of human capital, not just in our midterm management plan, but this is the most important part. And as was mentioned by Mr. Kono, Vice President, we are making all sorts of considerations. And in relation to global survey, which was conducted this time around, and 35,000 people in our companies, including our group companies, and Japanese people are 7,000 to 8,000 people. So the majority are non-Japanese foreigners. So that is the composition of our corporate group. So while recognizing this, we decided to perform the global survey. So if I may digress, what was more surprising for me as a result of this survey is that mission, vision, value, which we uphold, are most penetrated amongst non-Japanese people, not Japanese people, our colleagues outside of the country, so they understand the values of the company. They have full understanding and recognition about them and put them into practice. I strongly witnessed this. Also in May, June, July of this year, along with Mr. Kono, I did some overseas IR activities. I visited New York, London, Singapore. These are our key locations for us. And when I did that, I had a chance to meet with our colleagues about CX strategy and so on. And they are interested in global talent management system. That is to say, if they want, they can come to Tokyo and they can work in their posts in Tokyo. They want such a system to be established. And also, the same goes for Japanese people going abroad, work outside of the country in a borderless manner. If such things are possible in the human resources strategy, they will be pleased. So this is their motivation. Natural motivation, I mean. So including that to the 35,000 people, I want to draw a CX story which is developed by HR mainly, which can strike chord of those people we are in such a stage. Sorry, that was a rather prolonged comment for my follow-up. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Now, the third question. The third question is that considering the stock price in TSCTDR 1.0 time, how are we going to achieve that? And this time around, in our ESG story, we talk about earning capability strengthening and reduction of a capital cost and so on. That is the question. And so regarding this point, the share price increase is not just brought about by the ESG initiatives only, but as you know, capital policy, an investment program, business strategy itself, and so on will be relevant. And what we discuss here, there are 3 points, especially towards decarbonization. from the viewpoint of decarbonization, what we are thinking of doing going forward would be that GHG emissions will be cost for us for a business going forward. So this cost, for example, on the 1st of January next year, there will be EU ETS regulations about emissions where you need to buy emission right. So emission right is about 80 euros as of today, and going forward, CO2 will be a cost if that's the case. The emission right price is pretty much equivalent to the emission cost. If this is the case, as was mentioned by Ms. Tsui, CO2 reductions in our area would be quite difficult. So there are all sorts of approaches and methods that need to be used, and there are some affordable ones and expensive ones, and of course we will start with affordable ones. But in the meantime, there is some that cannot be removed by that, but through technology innovation we need to push down cost, and then it will lead to the reduction of capital cost. And also our customers, when they look at a scope 1 for us is scope 3 for our customers. So going forward, scope 3 reductions will be an emphasis for some customers and partners, and I believe that such customers and partners will increase in number. So in our ESG and decarbonization story, including scope 3 emissions, we have declared that we will try to cut emissions in scope 3 too. So such a trend will be never-ending. So how to reduce emissions at a low cost will be an important question, because this will push up our competitiveness and we can be a preferred employer as well as logistics player, and that will lead to the enhancement of earning capability, which will result in the expansion of business. That is our thinking. So by accumulating such efforts, and also I am the head of planning as well as the CX planning department, and I am the CFO as well. So such a social value can be translated into economic value, and that is going to be my task and mission as well as the mission for the department. So in that sense, continuing such efforts will result in the increase in share price and so forth. Thank you very much. And thank you very much. So that was a very detailed explanation, very easy to understand. Thank you very much, Mr. Tezuka, for your question. So the next question is likewise Minegishi-san, who raised a hand. Please go ahead. Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Yes, we can hear you clearly. I have two questions. First and foremost, the ship fuel. In April, you said that LNG would be the mainstay. But in your explanation, ammonia fuel seems to be a keyword here. So any change? Could you share the background to this change? That's my first question. And another question would be for President. So all sorts of energy costs are increasing, and are you transferring that to freight prices? What's your idea about price hikes? These are my questions. Two questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Minegishi. So first and foremost, I would like to respond to the question. The question was that back in April, when we discussed the midterm management plan, LNG fuel was the mainstay, was positioned as such. But this time around, was it changed to ammonia fuel? Well, we didn't make a change. Through phases on a gradual basis, we need to cut emissions. And at this point in time, in the immediate future, if we try to cut emissions, then LNG is a very important option. LPG is the same. And in that sense, at this point in time, LNG fuel ships are being constructed and built, and going forward, the number of such ships will increase. An ammonia fuel engine in Japanese engine manufacturers, together with them, we are jointly developing such engines, but they are not complete. None is complete. Across the globe, there are some European manufacturers which are competing to develop such engines, but they will only be available around 2026. The first ship will only be available then. An ammonia fuel supply chain is not fully developed, so our ships are demo ships. And to transport ammonia, it's an ammonia fuel ships, so the fuel will be supplied from the cargo, that is ammonia. So at the very beginning, that is a direction. So gradually, if a demonstration makes a progress, and if things are put into practice, that'll be around 2030 or so. So prior to that, it's necessary for us to cut CO2 emissions. So in the meantime, there are some existing established technology, LNG fuel ships, LPG fuel ships. These would be developed, and in a transition period, we will reduce emissions. That's our strategy. So LNG first and then ammonia. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Minegishi, for your questions. So I'd like to respond to your second question. Thank you very much for specifically appointing me. So energy costs and so on are rising at this point in time. And from customers, what about the coverage situation about price hikes, freight price hikes? So cost-wise, first and foremost, what we need to pay or bear would be using new fuels with a new technology, newly built ships, compared with heavy oil traditional existing ships. The construction or building cost would be higher. That is a reality. To be more specific, how much, I cannot quantify that, but at least, as was mentioned by Mr. Kono, LNG fuel ships and conventional heavy oil ships, when we make a comparison between the two, 20 to 30% increase is observed in the shipbuilding cost. Also, after you build the new ship, then as a fuel, you need to have a new alternative fuel to propel the ship. So compared with heavy oil price and cost, and the price gap would be the additional incurred cost. So there are two new types of cost. I used to be a general manager for automotive transportation ships, and as was mentioned earlier, automotive LNG introduction was made during or when I was a general manager. So the cost increase part for the LNG ships for automotives, we were trying to gain understanding from customers so that they would be happy to pay the premium, and that's something we have been trying for a long time, and very recently, finally we are getting some understanding from our customers, and unlike before, now we can receive a premium from our customers. This is not applied to all customers. This effort was started only very recently, but finally we are gaining understanding, and there are many examples as such. So taking this opportunity, we try to gain more understanding from more customers, and especially this kind of a zero emission or low carbon LNG is only low carbon ships, and by using such new ships, what sort of benefits and values can be brought about for customers. We will thoroughly explain all of them, and about the value, we try to gain understanding so that we can charge a premium to our customers. This is something that is a very down-to-earth effort, and this is the only option or way forward for us. And regarding a fuel cost, for example, LNG fuel compared with heavy oil can be sometimes lower or can be higher, so it fluctuates. For example, if it's heavy oil, it's the same, and the fluctuation of variable part can be covered by customers in many contracts. So if alternative fuel pushes up the cost, then as long as we can gain understanding from our customers in the same way, it'll be possible for us to charge customers for this additional part. This is a very persistent or tenacious efforts, and this is how we are trying to gain understanding from our customers. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Minagishi. Now we've passed the designated time, so we'd like to stop accepting questions at this juncture. But through the chat, there are still 2 more questions remaining, so we will respond to those questions. So first question would be the following. So currently you're making efforts around energy efficiency maximization, and what is the overall investment amount? Do you have any number in mind? So please respond to this question. Well, thank you. At this point in time, 45% reduction is the new announcement, and in the midterm management plan, the overall volume is 30%, so this is a 15% increase, and of course it'll push up the cost. But this time around, during the midterm management plan period, as was mentioned earlier, ammonia-fueled ships and newly developed ships will be available in 2026 or so. So this is beyond that. There will be ships to be put into practice which will be ordered. So at this point in time, fuel conversion premium will not change too much from what we mentioned in a midterm management plan during the midterm management plan period. 450 billion yen is the decarbonization investment amount we mentioned in the midterm management plan. So within this capacity, or in accordance with this capacity, we will see the investment level trending. And in the next midterm management plan after 2027, technology will make a progress. Also, some additional cutting costs will be incurred. So we will scrutinize the numbers even more. So in the next midterm management plan, or even prior to that, once we have more clarity, we'd like to offer some more explanation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So the next question will be the final one. So through the chat, we received this question. Let me read the question. So the question says that there are 2 questions, but in fact there are 3. The first one is alternative fuel ship development plan. By what year? How many ships will be developed for which fuel? And the next one is within the scope 3 emissions, what are the major components? And then the third one, the final question, in the shipbuilding environment response cost, have you been gaining understanding from customers about passing the cost on to customers from the previous midterm management plan? These are the 3 questions. So please respond to these questions. Okay, thank you. About the eco ships ordering situation. In the midterm management plan, we discussed this. By 2030, the breakdown of the ships which will be commissioned, overall we will have 45 ships, eco ships will be ordered. And then LNG, 31 ships, ammonia, 3 ships, LPG, 8 ships, methanol, 3 ships. That will be the breakdown. My apologies. Scope 3 emissions. For Scope 3, biggest component would be Category 1, 1LK service purchase, and Category 3, energy upstream. These will be the major components. And about transferring cost onto freights, President, would you like to follow up on this? May I? Well, as was mentioned earlier, LNG conversion for automotive ships in 2020, the first ship was made available, and up to last month, 7 ships have been available. And about the use of such ships, we've been engaging automakers in discussions, and Japanese manufacturers and some European manufacturers as well, since we announced our midterm management plan, have shown some understanding about a premium, and we signed new contracts. There have been some actual examples as such. And so this is quite a major development. Thank you. Thank you very much. Another point, major components about the Scope 3 emissions. ONE is, of course, Scope 3 emissions because it's an equity method affiliate, so their emissions is a major Scope 3 component, we would say. So we are now trying to put structure or system in place to capture those emissions. And as was asked by Mr. Tezuka earlier, in 2025, 10 million tons is our outlook. And so this is not a direct, but indirect for us. So we need to work with Scope 1 partners by collaborating with them or co-creating with them. We'd like to tackle this issue. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for those many questions. We'd like to conclude the Q&A session. Thank you very much. On that, we'd like to conclude NYK ESG Story 2023 briefing session. Thank you very much for your participation today. Thank you.